How are you?
Hey, Christina, nice to see you.
Hey.
Hi, Justine.
Hi, everybody.
Hey,
Hi, everyone. And we've got the trade guru herself, Mary Waters, coming in, I think. Or at least someone from her team. We'll see if it's actually her when her face
Yeah, it's her, I believe.
Wow. I'm feeling the pressure now. She's good. And I know this is an important sector for the state in terms of boosting exports. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started here. We'll probably have people jumping in as we go, and forgive me if we have some hiccups along the way as I see multiple faces popping up. So I'm Trevor Williams. I'm with Global Atlanta. We are, as y'all know, most of y'all know, we're an international business news source. Been around since 1991, so keeping the flag flying high for almost 30 years, and covering how the global economy affects our city. We're excited to be partnering with Pendleton Consulting Group on this series of discussions, and we say that directly. This is not a one-way conversation like I've told so many of you. This is multi-directional discussion that's going to bring in expertise from a lot of different people, and that's really how we formulated these events. But I'll let Jorge tell you a little bit more about that. We frame this in a framework of reframing resilience, which is the idea of, in the post-COVID world, we're going to have to think about our international relationships maybe in different ways. We're going to have to go about partnerships, possibly with more targeted strategies. And so we've gone through various international business sectors. We did supply chain, we've done medical technologies, we did a foreign direct investment panel, and now we're focusing today on services exports. And something that we're all very interested in, I think gets short shrift sometimes in the push to expand trade. So I'm going to let Jorge give you a little bit of word of introduction, then Guy Tesler is going to tell us a little bit more about the format, and we'll jump straight in.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Thank you for carving some time and spending some part of the morning with us. I'm really thrilled to see the faces. We don't get to see, even though we do a lot of these seminars and webinars, it's normally one-way communication, but in this way, two-way, like Trevor was saying, it's really nice because we get to see faces that we don't get to see too often nowadays. I miss that part. But Trevor mentioned about, for us at Pendleton, the resiliency, it's very important, but also particularly for Guy and I who are on this call from Pendleton, and also Lauren, the other thread that we put on this type of conversations, it's the international and the global connection, and how important, how critical those roles are for Georgia and for the Metro Atlanta. So in this age where we are talking about resiliency because of COVID and the economy, we want to ensure that in every one of these conversations that we've had, whether it be like Trevor mentioned, this one on export, which is self-evident, but the other ones are on healthcare, as we've done in supply chain. It's the importance of the role that global connection play in those resiliency. And that is an integral part of what we do at Pendleton. We're a group of professionals that are dedicated to economic development. And we work with the field, we work with community, we work with organizations, we work with companies to develop and deploy business and economic development strategy, working with the partners in the different organizations that are many represented here. It's critical that we maintain those 2 points, and I'm looking forward to hearing today from the export of services around education. We got tourism, and also from the fintech sector and other services. So I'm looking forward to the discussion. So Guy, you want to take it over and explain a little bit more?
Sure. Not a lot to add, but I think that one of the things that we're trying to do is to develop a conversation that will not end whenever we end this this program. So if for some reason there are people that you are interested in following up with, continue your conversation, people that you didn't know before that, and it seems interesting and valuable for both sides. And at the end of the conversation, please reach out to us, and we'll make the introductions, we'll facilitate the conversation, and make sure that this is not just one event, another 1 hour on the calendar that adds to the other frontal presentations that we all attend all day, but an ongoing conversation. Many of the people that are on the call have been with us on previous conversations and know that this works, and glad to see the people that this is the first exposure to this format. And we hope that you find interest in staying in the group, staying on the mailing list, and engaging in real conversations like we used to back in the day when we used to sit around the table and do things that have an impact, not just for information, but for action and activity and benefit in this whole area of international business economy for the benefits of everyone. Thank you. And Trevor, back to you.
Sure. Yeah, and I think the only thing I'd add to that is that, you know, the discussion about resilience in terms of international connectivity is extremely important at a time when it seems like it's easy to think that we can wall ourselves off. You know, whether it's with the pandemic for health reasons, we are kind of walled off, or whether it's protecting our own internal business and feeling like, or focusing directly on our insular little communities. I think sometimes we can forget that there's still opportunity out there, and that's kind of what we hope to call attention to. So we're going to run through some quick introductions. I'm going to ask each of you who have not participated before to just say your name and your organization. I think we're going to cut it off at that, just so that we don't get into long introductions, and we'll definitely bring you in later in the conversation. Everybody should have a chance to speak or ask questions. Our featured speakers are going to speak, but not present per se. So I'll lead us and guide us through that balance there. So why don't you start off, Dean, and I'll introduce you further when we get into the discussion aspect. But just tell us name, organization, and then I'll run through the people who have not been on the call before. Dean Fusto.
Sure, thanks, Trevor. Dean Fusto, president of Brandon Hall and International Boarding School, grades 6 through 12 in Atlanta.
Great. Amy.
Hi, I'm off mute, right? Amy Barbieri, co-founder and president of Vital 4.
Umang.
Good morning. Umang Mulbari, president, Discover Destinations.
All right. I think y'all know John Parkerson, but John, since you're going to speak this time, why don't you jump in?
I'm John Parkerson, and I'm an international business attorney at Hall Booth Smith, also honorary consul general of Hungary.
Ernie.
Yeah, Ernie Eichenbaum, Operational Transformations, World of Software, working with India, Israel, US, Canada, business process improvement and technology transformations.
Perfect. Bashir.
Bashir Mihubi with the Frank Council Group International Franchising Development.
Thanks for being here. Christina, I think you haven't joined us before.
Hi, everybody. I'm Christina Morris. I'm the project manager for FinTech Atlanta.
Great. And Mary, are you new to this forum? I think you might be.
Yes.
Everybody knows you, but
I
go
am
ahead.
Mary Waters. I'm Deputy Commissioner for International Trade with the Georgia Department of Economic Development. Hi, Jorge.
Hi, Mayor.
And Michael.
Yeah, hello. I'm the Director for Global Business Development at the Metro Atlanta Chamber. So thanks for having me.
Hi, Michael.
Hello.
Brandon.
Hi, Brandon Barnes. I'm the Director of International Tourism Sales at the Atlanta Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Okay, Shazine.
I'm Shazine Titian, Senior International Trade Manager with the Georgia Department of Economic Development.
Great. I'm not sure if Maria can hear us. Maria's from the cyber at Georgia State, but Maria, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Sorry, guys. My video decided he didn't want to work today, so he took the day off. So
Okay.
Maria Luisa Pino, PhD student at the Georgia State University, research scholar at the Cyber Center for International Business and Research, also Georgia State University, and board member of the Brazilian American Chamber of Commerce Southeast chapter.
Great. And Carrie's been with us. Heather?
Good morning, Heather McLeod from U.S. Commercial Service. Heard about this forum through Carrie, and I do cover the services industry portfolio for the U.S. Export Assistance Center in Georgia.
Great. And Dawn, I think you're new to our group here as well. Can you hear us?
I can. Hi, I'm Dawn Townsend, work for Mary Waters at the Georgia Department of Economic Development.
All right. And we've got, I think we've got Regina on her phone, but she'll be joining us as well. Regina's from Next Generation Manufacturing. And then we've got C Song, who why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm an intern at Global Atlanta. I'm also a student at Georgia Tech.
Great.
Good to see you.
Yes, thanks for being here with us and helping us facilitate this. This has been great. Okay, so we're going to jump in. You know, Mary has spoken about this at length with many different audiences, so I don't want to belabor it, but you know, services can be an export. I think that's the first thing we have to start off and talk about. You know, exports are not just putting something in a box and shipping it across the world or across the ocean. It's you know, any kind of service can be packaged and sold to international customers. And if we look at the sectors we have represented here, whether it be franchising, which is a huge source, as Bashir knows, of royalties coming back in, or legal services, or tourism, or education, there's all kinds of ways that Georgia benefits from the quote unquote sale of these services. And, you know, I've done a lot of reporting on education in particular. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but I think it's something like $800 million plus in terms of spending for international students that come here. You know, to over 23,000 international students, and that's just on their tuition, not including all the multiplier effects and job creation effects of their additional spending in the community. So I think as we think about resiliency, we have to think about how we, you know, position these sort of intangible sectors of the economy. So I guess since I'm talking about education, why don't we bring in Dean Fusto from Brandon Hall School. Dean, you've had, you know, a lot of international, a large proportion of your student body is from overseas. Can you talk about how you think about education as an export a little bit, and what kind of dynamism your students inspire in terms of the economy here?
Yeah, thanks, Trevor. I think for me, I started Brandon Hall about 5 years ago, and the vision was to globalize the school. And by that, I mean trying to really break down the walls of what a school is perceived to be, especially a nonprofit like ourselves. So just being able to, not only from the student perspective, we have about 28 countries represented, and that number is always growing, but also in terms of partnerships globally. And those can take all kinds of forms. We do leadership training. There's been teacher training that we've done in the past for some countries like Cambodia and Vietnam. And then students that coming here in the summer, they're here to study youth leadership, social entrepreneurial work. It really runs the gamut. But it really has to also start with a vision about what a school may have been at one time, especially a high school. This is what I'm talking about is probably much more relevant or has been more prevalent in colleges, but a high school, it's a little different. And just trying to get people on board with that way of thinking. So far, it's been a success.
What made you think that international should be a cornerstone of kind of the resiliency or the strategy of the school?
Part of it is, you know, the mission we have since 1959 is to be a school that represents a diverse group and for our students to be global citizens. So if you have that charge, and if you're going to take that seriously as a leader, you have to put action to that. You have to make it real. And that's what we've been able to do. That's what we continue to work on this year. And I know we'll talk about this later, has been incredibly challenging. I think the one thing we definitely did a few years back that has helped now is to make sure our international population is not, or our school is not reliant on one particular country or region. That's a pitfall that I know a lot of schools tend to make, and we've been able to avoid that to a large extent. Not completely, but to a large extent.
Yeah, definitely. I'll probably ask Jacobus to chime in on that point later on, particularly when it comes to colleges and the prevalence of Chinese students coming in, and many budgets being bolstered by a lot of that spending. Some say to the detriment of diversification. So Dean, I'll definitely get back to you for sure. I want to make sure we run through all our speakers. Amy, can you tell us your top line kind of view of what Vital 4 does? I mean, I know you're engaged in using data and doing anti-money laundering and all these kinds of high level kind of things, but just tell us briefly what the company does.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me today. By the way, pretty impressive folks panel that are here. So thanks for having me. So Vital 4 is a technology company, and we aggregate data from all over the world, and we use that data to provide to our customers risk mitigation tools. So when I say that, what I mean is, our customers in the background screening industry use it for pre-employment purposes. So they use this data to determine if there's a risk level there with the individuals they're hiring. The financial services industry, which we're heavily engaged in, uses it, as you mentioned, for anti-money laundering. So there's regulatory, charges all over the world that says, hey, you have to do these certain things. You have to look at particular data to determine if someone's been involved in a financial crime. And so we provide that information there. So that's pretty high level. We're just looking for bad actors. We're looking for people who are involved in some sort of, corruption, fraud, anything that would cause risk to an organization from a customer perspective, employee perspective, any kind of third party risk there.
If you're aggregating from all over the world and taking publicly available data, how do you kind of compete or distinguish yourself from others that are out there?
Yeah, well, there's a couple different ways, and I mean, I won't go into a full sales pitch, but one, from a technology perspective, we're the first in the world to really utilize artificial intelligence and machine learning in a couple of different areas of the data collection process, what kind of data that we pull back as far as the relevancy is concerned in the data. And then we build what we call profiles of people, and then organizations use those profiles to determine if they either can do business with them or put them in a certain risk bucket. So the way we're doing that is a fully automated solution, and some of our big competitors, big legacy providers out there use a manual process still, which is kind of crazy to think about that today. But where they've got researchers, and those researchers are gathering data, and they're putting data into a database, and that can be risky from a human error perspective, a compliance perspective. It's not as up to date. It's not, the coverage isn't there. So that's one of the main things that separates us from some of the others. Yeah.
Great. I'll come back to you and we'll ask you about some of your international deals that you've done, because I think that would be instructive for people. But Umang, tell us a bit about Discover Destinations. I know you focus mainly on inbound tours, which I'm sure are kind of suffering right now. Tell us how you're oriented, and then how you're kind of pivoting right now.
Sure. So thanks for having me on. So Discover Destinations, what we are is a receptive tour operator. So we handle pretty much international clients that are coming into the US, as well as Canada and Mexico, but primarily the US as a destination. Our main markets are Asian countries, so India, Philippines, Singapore. The Middle East is a big market for us as well, and we do a little bit from the UK market. It's everything from one person to, the largest group we've done is 500. So for various conventions and exhibitions that are happening, as well as the leisure side of things. So yeah, that's definitely taken a hit, because I think conventions aren't happening at all, since everybody's really going virtual. And even on the leisure side of things, because of many of the embassies being closed, visas aren't being able to be processed and things like that. So in terms of pivoting, you know, we're looking at new markets that are probably going to be opening up first before those Asian countries start opening up to allow tourists to come back to the US. So that's kind of what we're anticipating. And we're also looking at doing a little bit more into the domestic side of things, because that's where initial pickup is going to happen, is from the domestic front and then from locally here. So, yeah.
What sort of questions have you been getting from people overseas about, you know, safety in the US, and how much are you having to sort of be an ambassador for what's happening here?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the big question is there's a lot of unknown in terms of what the policies are right now within the US in terms of being allowed to travel here. So we've had a lot of requests that have come in internationally. It's just, okay, am I supposed to quarantine for 14 days? Am I not supposed to quarantine? Am I going to be provided a test on arrival? What happens if I do have a positive test?
Yeah.
You know, I think that there's quarantine, not if you're traveling from India, for example, into the US. So how does it work? Is it based on where I land, when I land? So those types of things.
Yeah. Is it based on citizenship or where you're coming from? You know, there's so many questions that I think will put a damper on travel for some time to come, even when countries open up. You know, I was on a call with Mexico City tourism group last week, and they were outlining all the great things they're doing to, you know, to welcome visitors, but they didn't really say, you know, here's the regulatory framework, like here's you're gonna have to be quarantined. I think Mexico is actually not. It's one of the few countries that I think is still allowing American tourists relatively unfettered, as long as you're coming in by air versus by land.
Right.
But yeah, it's even that distinction makes it a little bit crazy to navigate through. So, so how do you think about, you know, you've been completely oriented internationally. How do you think about adapting to the domestic market?
So I think initially it's going to be creating packages. We're set up as a B2B company, so we're working with travel agents that are set up internationally primarily. So, you know, other travel agents that are selling to consumers directly. So to try to pivot from that and go to a consumer standpoint, I think a lot of our focus is going to be on the social media marketing, and then getting the packages out directly to the consumers here locally, which is going to be very different than what we've been used to doing, and meeting our customers through various trade shows and through references and things of that sort.
Yeah, I think one silver lining may be that, you know, people who are less willing to use a tour operator before and think they can do everything on their own will probably be more reliant now on someone who has the expertise and the knowledge to organize everything, given the uncertainty. So maybe that's gonna help. Yeah, I'm not sure, but I want to bring in John. John, so tell us, you know, you've done a lot of international work over the years, particularly with Delta before you joined Hall Booth. I'm not sure if there's anything in between there, but how do you think about your work? Because it's sort of a hybrid between international and local, because a lot of times you're working with companies that are coming into the United States and investing and putting a physical presence here, but you also have to be on that end, kind of serving either the international operations of domestic firms that you serve, or the you know, serving the head office in those countries before those headquarters end up sending their subsidiaries over here. So has that always been, have you always thought of it kind of as an export, or is that something that you just did naturally based on your work at Delta?
Well, I've always recognized it as an export. It's not something I've given a lot of thought to, but I realized that, you know, like any export, you have to have a market to export to, and much of our challenge with both inbound and outbound is maintaining that market, or identifying the market and trying to become a presence there. It's difficult, I think, in this age where we've talked a bit about the inability to travel, to get visas and so forth. It becomes more difficult to to do the type of marketing that we need to do as international business people, providing a service. I can't go to Central Europe a couple of times a year like I customarily do to meet new potential clients. I have to pivot and find other ways to make my presence known. So that's the staying relevant and staying visible is a bit of a challenge. Also maintaining a certain level of business, even though you may be visible in some ways, is challenging because I think a lot of companies from other countries feel like face-to-face visits, seeing the sites, the potential site for their manufacturing expansion or whatever, is such and meeting the local officials, their potential customers, is such a key component of what drives their decision whether to expand into the United States, and it also works in reverse. That's definitely affected, and so we have to find new ways of maintaining that visibility, establishing trust, and demonstrating competency without too much body language associated with that as we had in the past.
Well, I would imagine too that in your work that there's so much that is intangible. Like you're not going in and making a hard pitch all the time saying this is my product, it's going to help your company, you invest in this, you get this kind of return or output. There's so much that has to be finessed, I would assume, or where people have to start to trust you before or even trust the idea of hiring a service provider, right? Like one thing that I've heard is that a lot of international companies are distrustful of, our cottage industry and lawyers and accountants and everybody else.
I think lawyers have a really a difficult job sometimes of establishing that level of trust with incoming or inbound foreign clients, because there's this universal fear, it seems to be, of lawyers in general, and I think that as a lawyer who spent most of his career, in a corporate setting, working for example, for Delta Airlines for many years, we realize that we're just part of a team, and that and I've seen that team, my role in that team with my corporate clients, expand recently beyond just providing legal advice. And part of that's because they feel like they need that once I've established that trust here in the United States, they need to turn to me for some of their business decisions with respect to their operations in the US. Increasingly, they can't hire a new director of the US subsidiary from the Czech Republic very easily as they used to be able to, because nobody can come over here and actually meet them face to face, or vice versa. They can't travel there. So you have to, rely increasingly on your web-based technology to try to get an impression of those people. But what I find is that my clients will often call me into that interview and just to give a layman's feedback at the end of the day as to regarding that potential candidate. So you find your role expanding, I think, in this environment.
Yeah, and one thing I might throw out to all of our featured speakers is just kind of how do you think about the mechanics of international business, just like getting paid or exchange rates that may affect people's willingness to pay and may change on a whim. I mean, John, how do you think about that? And do you have trouble with that sometimes? Or do you have to kind of offer flexible terms to your clients and things like that? Or is it pretty much?
Definitely have to offer more flexible terms. I think clients generally are slower than usual because they're watching their expenditures and maybe prioritizing how they make payments. Sometimes they feel like where their legal counsel or maybe even other consultants can be a lower priority than some of the more urgent, or at least in their perception, urgent needs that they may have. So, I think we on our side have to be willing to understand those situations and maintain that sympathy, that compassionate attitude, and cut them slack
Yeah,
not,
definitely.
not start assessing interest on late payments where you might otherwise do that.
Yeah, definitely. Umang, do you find that things change quite a bit based on, barring COVID? Obviously, this is what people are sort of calling a black swan type of event, but do you see geopolitical shifts changing things or exchange rates? And I'd actually like to get Brandon to comment as well about just what he sees from the international expenditure side in Atlanta, but how do you sort of ride the waves of what's happening in the world and navigate those things?
Yeah, I mean, I think, our clients are definitely looking for more flexible terms. One of the things that we're kind of reassessing is credits that we're offering to these agents, just because the tourism industry is one of the ones that's been hardest hit. And it's risky for us to be able to offer as much credit as we used to, just not knowing, the financials of many of these companies and where they're at. And, so we're flexible in terms of cancellations and things, and that's what people are looking for. But in terms of credit policies, those are evolving in the complete opposite direction for us, where we're not offering little to none. I mean, and that may be to just some of our existing customers that have been working with us for 10, 15 years now. So
yeah, definitely. Brandon, can you give us just a sense for international visitorship in Atlanta and and the type of spending we're talking about here, and kind of ranking it versus other maybe export segments, maybe what some of the top markets are and how things have been affected by the fact that we're not having massive conventions bringing tens of thousands of people here these days?
Yeah, sure. For Atlanta, we have a little over 1 million, about 1.2 million international visitors a year. And that's not just tourists, that could be business travelers, convention travelers, friends and family. And the spending is just over $1 billion a year. So it's a significant amount, and especially when you start thinking, everyone that's involved in that. So it's, the airlines, it's the hotels, it's the retail, it's the restaurants, it's transportation. So, that's all been severely affected, of course. On the convention side, we've had over 240 conventions cancel already so far. Pretty much wiped out our entire calendar for all of 2020. Even in 2021, some people are already starting to push back. Now, the good point is some of those are just rescheduling and trying to push it back. So that's kind of helped it out. And we, next year looks like it should be pretty good if everything comes through the way we expect it to. But, in the US overall, and I think this is something that Jorge has been banging the drum for years, but overall, travel and tourism are 30% of all service exports in the United States. It's a huge amount. It's over $254 billion that comes into the US. That's not quite as big in Atlanta as it is in some other cities, but it's a tremendous contributor to the overall export, well, on that side, surplus that comes in. So
definitely, and it has to do with all of our other exports. I mean, I think when the Brookings Institution did the Metro Export Plan for Atlanta, and Jorge, you can correct me, but I think our biggest service export was air travel. that was the main thing. And I think that I've talked to a lot of folks at the state of Georgia's tourism office, as well as y'all at the city. And I mean, it seems like international tourism is kind of one of those blue sky areas that have a lot of room for growth. If you look at the airport, for instance, there's been much made about the fact that we're such a transfer oriented airport. I think it's something like at least 2/3 of our traffic is just changing planes at Hartsfield-Jackson, and only about maybe 10%, about 13 million or something like that, out of 110 million are international passengers. So there's so much more room to grow as Atlanta grows as a destination and as its profile internationally grows. I think, barring COVID, there's a lot of area for improvement.
Absolutely.
Trevor, no, I was going to say that on that point, I mean, the work we did, in fact, you were part of that group, and so were you, Jacobus, on that Gateway initiative we did for the chamber, in terms specifically, how could we position ourselves for people not just to think of the airport as a gateway to the US market, but what goes beyond the runways, what happens in Atlanta to get people to stay here and highlight all these things that we're talking about beyond the confines of the runway of the airport. That's exactly the point of that.
Yeah. Brandon, how do you sort of market the city to an international traveler? I mean, particularly given that you've got much higher levels of spending when it comes to international versus domestic or local.
So traditionally what we've done, and this goes to your point, is that we've tried to we team up with other destinations, because no one's going to necessarily on the leisure side anyway, come to Atlanta for an 18-day holiday. But if we can get 2 to 3 days on the front or back end to a trip to Orlando, or even a driving trip to the Southeast, that adds a tremendous amount. So Umang, for instance, we've been working closely together. I'm trying to put together some itineraries that include Atlanta. And I will say, just going back to the airport, I was talking to Delta this morning in the UK, and talking about resiliency, I think this is great for Atlanta, is that they are all starting with their hub-to-hub connections. So Atlanta, I think, is going to be the first to come back with international flights. And I think that's going to give us a relative advantage compared to other cities, whether it's for travel and tourism or any of the other international industries that are headquartered here in the city.
Yeah. Umang, I'd like to hear.
Trevor, if I may just hear,
sure.
So it's important, the airport, in terms of exports. You're right, the Brookings work did show that aerospace services was actually the largest. So tourism and travel is a big part of that. Some of it's connection, some of it's connected to the very important tourism business, but there's also a lot of other services around that, whether it is tech services for China Eastern that's done out of the Atlanta area, or maintenance service on international gatherings. So there's also a lot of exports that's around that infrastructure in addition to this direct tourism.
Yeah, and certainly, I mean, aerospace is our biggest product export. Mary, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's like $8 billion a year in terms of aerospace. But certainly we're
closer to 9. Yeah, we're a top 5 aerospace state, and just on the manufacturing side, more than 800 companies. And so you add in the logistics piece and the actual travel piece, and you're easily talking about double that number.
Yeah. So back to I don't know if y'all have heard or seen any numbers about how international visitors relate to international students, but I would be particularly interested if there was any quantification on that, because I know that a lot of people, come for family visits to see their son or daughter who are staying in the city, and that ends up having a ripple effect over time, I think. And Dean, do you see that quite a bit with your students? Families coming in, visiting them, or potentially, buying homes in Atlanta and things like that? I seem to have heard that from y'all in the past.
Absolutely, but again, there's pre-COVID and the current COVID, right? So we saw a lot of that pre-C-19, of a lot of families who were either relocating to the area. They still wanted their child to board, but they bought a home very nearby. We're in Sandy Springs, so just a lot of great neighborhoods here. A lot of queries about that. But again, since March, that has pretty much gone silent.
Mm-hmm. So
how about, I guess interesting, Bashir, how about from another component that we don't talk as much in the export side are the franchises. Are up there again with education and air travel and transportation. What's going on with the franchise in this during this period of COVID and the resiliency on that?
Right now, what the franchisors are doing, they're trying to make sure they communicate with their franchisees worldwide, making sure that they are there to support them, making sure that they understand what's going on in the local market. You need to know exactly what's going on. Like, to give you an example, in Israel, they called us to say, we want to reduce the royalties for the month of June or July, which is okay. And then you have to know that they are on lockdown or not lockdown. You have to be really understanding what's going on in the markets, because internationally we deal with franchisees, and we have to be really cognizant of the fact that they are going through issues.
Mm-hmm.
We're on the same team,
Exactly. Yeah. Hey, Bashir, can you back up a little bit and tell us just about the franchising infrastructure in Atlanta and kind of where Atlanta ranks in terms of whole sector and how it even works from an export perspective?
Well, Atlanta has some of the top franchisors in the world and has more than 100 franchisors. It's a huge industry. And we have franchisees all over the world. I mean, if you take Popeyes, Church's Chicken, Cinnabon, you know, they're all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a huge market.
Yeah, not to mention Chick-fil-A,
Bashir.
but they're not really international just yet. Yeah.
Can I ask
What do you, John Park?
Bashir,
Hi, John.
has this affected how you communicate with those franchisees? I mean, I know that you know, one of the key components with franchising is that you maintain that certain level or certain standards among all the franchisees. How do you, is it more difficult now to assess their performance?
I think it's not, the question now is not a question of performance. The question now is mitigating the issues and making sure that they are actually breaking even, making sure that they are not paying too much royalties, making sure that they have they're able to pay their franchise fees. It's all financial. It's not development right now. Development is going to be, franchising is development is based on traveling. You have to go and train them. You have to set up their shops. You have to be there for store opening. So the biggest focus that I spend my time on right now is understanding, saying, do not worry. It's okay. And I've had really positive responses when I call them preemptively saying, you don't have to worry about royalties right now. I've literally erased royalties for the last 3 or 4 months for many franchising companies. So that's
Is it, I've heard it's also very important, and this is probably relevant for other services exporters as well, which is why I want to bring it up, but I've heard it's extremely important to find the right partner on the front end, right? When you're going into a new country, a lot of diligence is done to find that master franchisee who can kind of run the operation in that certain market or region. And so if you have that strong one-to-one connection with the master franchisor in that market, then that may be helpful in sort of managing the disparate restaurants around that area. Is that
That's
right?
key. That's key. Finding the right partner internationally is very important. And the best way to find the right partner is to really select, to be very, very selective. And then keeping that partnership going is very important.
I think the same question goes to you, Christina. This is a question for Christina, because where you sit in terms of FinTech Atlanta, when I was engaged at the chamber with all these different clusters development, FinTech was one of the leading on the international field. What has happened since all this COVID thing from that perspective? Is it information from the companies? Amy, you could probably chime in because you play on that role. Any thoughts on that?
So yeah, I mean, I think that it depends. Some of the companies have sort of pivoted the work that they're doing. You know, I think you probably saw all of the information that's gone out about Kabbage and what they were doing with their lending and PPP. I think Rob just tweeted this morning that they just passed JP Morgan as the second largest in terms of I think volume. But then you have those global organizations, the ones that I've spoken to have said, you know, it's hit industry sectors differently. So those that are more diversified are probably going to see some things where some of their industries or their segments have gone down while others are helping keep them afloat. You've also got a couple of people who've told me that credit lines are tightening up a little bit. Can't get too much more into that other than that's, you know, what the reality has been is that these companies are spending a lot of time looking at their balance sheets, trying to figure out what are we doing in terms of expenses and revenues? Where are we going to cut? Do we need to retrain staff to do other work? Are we going to have to let them go? I think that it's been very interesting to sort of see. Some of the companies I spoke to also said, in terms of retraining their staff and looking at some of the things that they've had to do is looking at the products and services that they have and does it meet a need right now, especially on the payment side, all the things that you hear about contactless and interactionless, you know, where you can do a lot of things that will allow people to pay for their bills, to do their day-to-day activities without actually having to interact with people. I think I've seen some things with some companies about instant payments for staffers, you know, so that they can get access to their paychecks a little bit sooner. It's been very different and a little bit. I think it depends on the industries that they're in. Like I said, the companies that I've heard that are more diversified have probably fared a little bit better from what I've heard. And that it's also really dependent on where their other offices are located. Because if you're thinking about the fact that some places have been hit harder than others, then that means that the way that they bounce back and the speed at which they bounce back is going to be different as well. So it's been different.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, because you could look at it two different ways. One is focus on U.S. if you're a U.S. based company. The other is, you know, oh, let's actually diversify more and go out to more markets, particularly if we have a product that's suited for wide dispersion, because, you know, that will give us kind of this diversification that will help us weather some of these downturns maybe in the future. Amy, I wanted to use that as a segue to you. I know you've had some deals in various parts of the world. The UK is one that's popped up, and of course Christina knows there's been a lot of interaction between Atlanta and London on the payment side. But tell us about how you approach, Amy, these international deals and maybe some of the things you've done recently. And then I'm going to go to Ani after this, because he's got a question I think that harkens back to the tourism discussion, but we'll let Amy talk and then we'll go to Ani. You're muted right now, sorry.
I can't tell you how many times a week I do that. My apologies. No, I was just saying, to Christina's point, diversification, you know, is key. We've been fortunate we're in multiple different markets. And not only when I say that, meaning, you know, verticals, but multiple markets around the world. So it was weird when COVID hit, because it's like, wow, this is probably the only scenario we could think of that affects the entire world at the same time, right? Exactly. However, we have seen, for instance, our business in the pre-employment screening market has really taken a big hit, because if you can imagine, hiring has been down quite a bit. But it's really interesting, because some of the our customers, depending on what sectors they're in, for instance, we have some customers that are heavy in transportation, customers like Amazon, things like that have helped their business actually grow. So it's been interesting to see. And then internationally, you know, we've had lots of conversations with our partners and channel partners in those areas. And, you know, they've taken a hit as well, but not quite as much as we've seen in the pre-employment space. So on the fintech side, you know, they still have to be compliant no matter what. So we haven't seen as much of an impact there. As far as strategy, you know, and keeping that diversity going, absolutely. You know, we just moved into some markets in Asia, and we continue to expand our services in those areas and globally as well. One of the things I didn't mention, that we have, you know, this technology platform, but we also have a services side of our business where we're doing, and anybody that's lived, worked, or educated outside of the U.S., we're screening for, you know, against criminal records if they're, you know, if we can in those areas they lived, you know, verifications from a employment or a you know, education perspective. So for pre-employment, but yeah, so those are the ones we've seen the biggest challenge, because, you know, countries have shut down. We can't get access to court records. We can't get access to information at all. And so therefore, even if they wanted to hire, they can't, because they have that, you know, they have that roadblock in front of them. So it's interesting, kind of a little bit all over the place for us.
Yeah. I would imagine that in certain services businesses, it's actually adds to the resiliency that you bill on a contract or on a monthly or recurring type basis versus, you know, physical product you're having to sell and make that profit each time you sell an individual item. Sometimes those payment terms can kind of span your bridge you deal potentially. We've even noticed that in our advertising business in certain ways. But Ani, you had a question I think you wanted to bring up?
Yeah. So this question is for all speakers, considering that we are talking about resilience and positing towards something else. If you were to posit to a different area or industry, where would you go? Every business, every entrepreneur, every company is thinking about it. Okay, this is not working. It's not going to working. I'm 20% down, 30% down, 33% down, 50% down, like Bashir said or somebody said. So what else do
Actually, I have a story. Of all the franchisors that I represent, there's a company called Cookies by Design. We just opened a store about 6 months ago in Toronto, and the sales are through the roof because it's all delivery. So that's been unbelievable. The franchisees do not believe the level of success. So there is a silver lining somewhere.
No, but if you have to leave your industry, see, cookie order, you are talking about somebody like Umang, okay, in travel industry. I don't think anybody can give this industry good news for next 6, 12, 15 months. Okay, I just talked to a hotel chain from India and they are doing at 2%, 3%, which business can survive at that level? Tell me. So you have to leave your industry. What do you do?
So yeah, to kind of answer that, what we're doing, I mean, not to tourism, travel, I mean, that's kind of bounced back. It's just weathering the storm for the amount of time it's going to take for it to bounce back. So I think the one positive or the one silver lining with tourism is I would think that majority of the people that are on this call are itching to go somewhere or travel somewhere. Most of us have not taken a vacation in 6 months. I think we're all dying to get out as soon as borders open up and as soon as the vaccine's out and as soon as it's safe. So the numbers are going to explode when it comes to travel and tourism. And I think people that are kind of in our industry, in our field, like the receptives and the travel agents, they're going to be relied on even more so because we need to know the rules, the regulations versus like your online travel agents like an Expedia, a Booking.com, things like that. You may not get all the information from those websites that you would from a travel agent. But surviving is important. So to answer the second part of that question, to diversify, one of the things that we've kind of looked into is the PPP aspect of it when it comes to the tourism sector. So I think everybody's going to have some sort of PPP or PPE needs, like masks, temperature checks. They're going to have sanitation stations that are going to be necessary in airports, theme parks. Those unique things that are going to be needed to kind of open safely. That's where we're looking to try to kind of invest into now.
Yeah, you can almost sort of consult for your vendors that you use on the transportation side and things like that. Would be interesting.
I think if I could interject, I think safety is extremely important in making your customers feel safe. I know that people who currently have to travel for business are avoiding airlines and driving if they can. I think there's just saying everybody should wear masks and carry a hand sanitizer isn't enough. I think if the industry, the tourism industry addresses upfront and allows their customers to feel safe, you can be on the forefront of welcoming people back.
Yeah, great point. I wanted to kind of redirect that at you. You talked about sort of diversifying your student base and not being too reliant on any one place. I'm assuming you meant China, but tell us what you meant by that and how, what would a substantial drop in foreign students do to your model and your goals for Brandon Hall?
I mean, we definitely, like a lot of schools, have had to make sure we're ready with an online platform. And that pivot was pretty quick in March when we decided to close after the governor's executive order. The big shift for us though has been just because we're also a day school. We're not just a boarding school, and we have definitely been flooding the market here. The zip codes that tend to be within a 15-mile, 20-mile range of Brandon Hall, or 15, 20-minute range. So just doing a lot of marketing around that, whether it's snail mail, digital advertising, that's been the biggest change. And we've definitely seen an uptick in the day students. Most of our parents want in-person learning. They don't want to do virtual learning. And we're opening on August 12th as an in-person school. The concession, not necessarily concession, I think the peace of mind we could offer parents, though, is that you do have a choice. If you're not feeling comfortable yet with the numbers and the spikes, you can stay home another week or another 2 weeks, but we're here. We want you here. We're ready to go. We're a small school to begin with. So a lot of those social distancing measures were really, in a sense, kind of in place before C-19. So those are just some of the ways we've had to pivot.
Yeah, I mean, is being a boarding school helpful during this time, or does it hurt when you're talking about, you know, I would assume that gives parents internationally peace of mind that their kids are maybe in an enclosed environment and not exposed to, you know, everybody else out there in the world, and that you can sort of kind of control it there. But have you seen concern about the boarding aspect, or has that been kind of an advantage?
It's similar to the stock market and the kind of the cones. if you look at the market over the last few months, going like this, right? This for us is parent anxiety, international parent anxiety. More specifically, there are parents who want to come back but can't because of airlines, you know, not operating, or seeing just seeing the different depictions in the media and are worried. So we're getting a lot of things. I heard the talk about flexibility and nimbleness earlier. We've definitely had to be that. So there are parents who want to come in January. There are parents who maybe want to defer for a year. So we're just getting all kinds of requests that we've never had to field before. Ultimately, that's going to make us a better school, but we got to get through this patch first, you know, and figure out all these kind of models that we're being presented with.
Definitely. Hey, Michael, I wanted to ask you to chime in, if you don't mind. I know that you've kind of spearheaded the Metro Export Challenge over the last few years, and in reporting that, I've noticed that there's been a decided shift from a lot of manufacturers to many more tech and service provider companies. What do you see from the Metro Atlanta Chamber side in terms of the readiness or the awareness about the fact that, you know, if you don't have a physical product, you can actually still sell overseas? Are you starting to move the needle a bit on that?
So I think this year, of course, is an interesting year when it comes to spending the money that companies receive through the MEC grant program. And I mean, all of you are familiar with the programs. I don't have to talk too much in detail about it, but Vital 4 and Discover Destination, Brandon Hall were all recipients last year. Vital 4 also received additional funding in last year's pitch day, so they still have open funds. So, but most of you have used it for traveling, actually. You're going to shows or meeting with customers. But one thing we have always pushed among all companies in the program was to using some of the services that are here on the ground, not using necessarily the funds primarily only on the traveling side, which is an important part, but also to really get ready for exporting. It could be learning about export compliance. It could learn about translation. It could learn about, you could globalize your website, those kind of things. So there are a lot of services out there, and we have always encouraged companies to use that. This year, of course, there's this forced shift towards that from the recipients in this year's program. So we have seen very interesting ways of spending the money this year. Of course, one primary aspect is translation, but then also attending seminars on export compliance, look at others, how to get ready for when it's opening up again. It's definitely a shift this year, a forced one, but something we've encouraged companies in the past, and I mean the state too, and the U.S. Commercial Service and all other partners involved in that effort have always encouraged companies to look more in getting ready before getting on the plane, essentially. And so this year, I think that's something we could double down on.
Yeah. Well, so we're reaching 12. I'm going to ask one question. If anybody else has a question after that, we can stay on for a few more minutes. Otherwise, we'll close it down. But I wanted to ask Shazeen and Mary, like, do y'all see a similar kind of mindset among the companies that you're working with in terms of, you know, just kind of using this time to prepare because you can't go to a bunch of trade shows these days?
I mean, I would definitely say so, and every company has been hit by this differently. I would say, in broad strokes, the companies that have more of a technology component to their exports have been faring a little bit better in terms of keeping up the momentum of their existing international sales. Some manufacturers have been delayed somewhat just because of the realities on the ground. But I think companies are using this time differently. Again, some companies have not taken their foot off the gas pedal. You heard it from a lot of the speakers here today. And really the common thread is diversification and really taking some time to think about, how do I stay impactful? How do I stay engaged with my customers and my potential customers, and are using this time to kind of retool their engagement approach. And we're here to support, and we're supporting those companies, virtually. We're continuing to connect Georgia businesses with our international reps, with potential key partners in those markets that are up and running. So from that perspective, in terms of providing export services to companies in Georgia, we haven't stopped doing our day job, but Shazeen, I'll turn it over to you. You've been opening up a lot of work orders, particularly for our tech company, so I'll let you field that.
Yeah, and I've been intrigued to see how the various shows like Money 2020, for instance, in Europe has kind of pushed back, but still wants to do certain things. So how have you navigated that, Shazeen?
Yeah, the Money 2020 organizers announced officially yesterday that the Vegas and Europe shows are canceled this fall. I think, as Mary said, we haven't taken our feet off the pedals, and we've had continued engagement from a lot of our companies, and for me, covering the tech sector, a lot of tech companies. And it's nice to see a lot of positive stories of growth during this time. I think there's fintech companies, health IT, telehealth companies. There's companies in certain sectors that are leveraging opportunities prevented by the pandemic, and we're doing our best to help these companies continue to make international connections, connect them to resources.
Yeah, thank you. I was wondering, because it's so important. It's all about relationships, right? So how do you maintain those relationships, particularly on those what we used to do, what we still do at the shows, etc. It's very important. It's a good point.
Yeah, definitely. Does anybody have other questions, or should we close it down? If you got
I just got a question for Jacobus. How about your foreign students? Can you make a comment on that, Jacobus?
Yeah. Good
yes. Thank you, Jorge. It's interesting. Last week, there was a webinar that included the presidents of the universities, and President Cabrera from Tech actually put it really well and said, right now enrollments are at record levels across the board, but we actually applications and admissions are at record levels, and deposits are at record levels. But none of us are going to make any definitive statements until people pay tuition, huh? Any incoming freshman students, whether they're graduate or undergraduate, new students coming into the United States have to be in face-to-face classes, or they cannot get a visa. So a large number of graduate students have deferred to the spring. Who knows what the world will look like by the spring? Of course, all institutions, and Dean talked about this a little bit, have moved on rapidly, online very rapidly. And so in most of our graduate programs, we are trying to accommodate students offshore, fully online in the fall, so they can start while not being in the United States as if they were here, and they will be able to enroll in their master's programs. But we have seen a dramatic drop in international enrollments. Expectations are that it'll be low. Though enrollments at all universities are at record levels in Georgia. We are an anti-cyclical industry. when jobs go down, going to school goes up. And we see that in all programs. So for us, India and China are neck and neck in terms of international enrollments. Georgia State enrolls about 3,300 international students a year. Most of them actually are undergraduate students. Tech, of course, is the big one with a large number of international students. But yeah, we do see strong international enrollment even in graduate programs because programs are able to accommodate online learning. But a large number of international students have deferred their starts to the fall because for many students, you know, and this is actually a challenge for all of us that do graduate programs, is that yes, students come and their F1 visas say you come to the United States to be a student. But we all know, I was one of them, you come to the United States to be a student, but your hope is to be CPT, OPT, maybe H-1B, and stay in the United States. So the moment you take that physical presence out of the equation for a student, then their commitment to come here changes dramatically. Right. And everybody deals with that problem. But we do see, we had record applications for students from abroad. Many of them are deferring. We see record deferrals for students to come start in spring instead of in the fall. But the interest is very strong. Right now, it's a matter of getting a visa. And most US embassies around the world are not even doing visa interviews. Korea is doing visa interviews. We've had students arrive over the past weekend that are new incoming students from Korea. But India and China, which are the two big markets, there are no visa interviews at the point.
Yeah. Well, speaking of India, I kind of want to mention two things. Ani has posted a invitation to an upcoming webinar that they're doing on India, and in the chat, assuming everybody saw that. And I've also posted, if you can't get enough of Global Atlanta or webinars, online discussions, we've got one tomorrow with 3 different diplomats from India, Indonesia, and Korea. We're going to be talking about you know, the COVID situation in their countries and how they're dealing with it economically, and you know, how that's going to affect investment potentially in Georgia. So if y'all want to join that tomorrow, you're welcome. Same time, 11 o'clock. And unfortunately, you'll have to see me again. But if anybody has any other questions, we can entertain those. It seems like there's still some appetite to stay on for a few more minutes, but if not, I'll close it down.
I must apologize. I just realized that I'm 1 hour late.
This is a good discussion.
Doesn't usually happen, but today I don't know.
It's fine, Tamer. We're recording it, and once I'll send you the link, and you can catch up on the great discussion that we had here.
It's been some great discussions about education.
I'm looking forward to this, and just I assume, you know, there's no rationale, but I assume it was 12 rather than 11. But I'm glad we have the recordings. So,
well, sometimes we are eating lunch during our planning meetings, so I'm guilty of that for sure. But
I did have a conversation with Guy and Jorge about this a bit earlier. I do think this platform, this conversation that we're having here, is a very interesting innovation of networking people while we're in a virtual space. Actually, this is different from what most other people are doing. And, you know, in the beginning, I was not sure how this was going to work, but I think we are doing something very interesting here.
I very much
look forward to the next one.
Hey, Trevor, I have a question.
Yes.
To Jacobus. Jacobus, going back to your last statement about China and India being your largest market, and you're seeing probably 50 to 80% drop, or maybe more?
Yes.
Would you consider going to India?
Well, you know, as a public university, our challenge is that putting an international footprint down is very much something that happens within the USG system. And I think Georgia State, at this stage, the commitment is to serve our students in Georgia. I think, you know, I think many of us in the business school, certainly, we think that's a very interesting discussion. But I don't think right now, and I say this in my personal capacity, not as a university, on behalf of the University of Business Schools, that I think that the political climate for us as a university to do that right now is not the right one. So
Okay,
I think, but I know where you're coming from.
No, you don't know where I'm coming from. And I'm coming from, if you extrapolate that question to all the universities in Georgia and all the universities in USA, you know how much business we are losing because of this situation, and how are we going to change ourselves? And that was the question which I asked first. If you know, it's a demand and supply question. If you don't do it, somebody else will do it. From Canada, from Australia, from New Zealand, it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think you're already sort of seeing that a little bit in the sentiments, but there's an opportunity, I think, with India in particular, given how close we're becoming.
There you go.
But yeah, anybody else have any questions? Otherwise, I think we're gonna.
I think John has one.
I was just going to make a
y'all are welcome to drop off at any moment. You know, we're not holding y'all hostage here, but
just a quick comment. You know, if there is a decline at this time in the export of services, and I tend to think that there is, I don't have statistics, but I think it gives us a unique opportunity to think creatively about how to maintain the relationships that we already have. And I've actually become closer to some of my foreign clients during this period because we've resorted to different means of communication and just using more Zoom and Teams and other visual means as a substitute for just routine phone calls has allowed me actually to become closer to some of my foreign clients during this period.
Yeah, well, I want to echo that, John, and that's not just with direct clients or potential clients or clients that you had but are on hold because of the situation. But that's at the end, that's the essence of what we're trying to do here, is to maintain that relationship with the pertinent players, because that's why we do this by invitation, depending on what the subjects are, right? And then we'd love to keep adding to that, but that's at the end, that's the gist, and ideas comes out of it, and to remain resilient, and like Jacobus always say about the innovative piece, and I think that's paramount. That's one thing that we could do. And going back to Annie's point, ideas come out of conversations.
And I would add that to what John said is that the relationship becomes a lot more personal. Jorge and I were on a conference a few days ago, and it happened in someone's bedroom. So where can you get this intimate relationship with your client that you can get in this type of environment? I was in somebody's kitchen.
What happened in bedroom?
Nothing happened, but and you can see my forest through the window, so you get to an intimate relationship with people that you cannot get when you go and visit them at the office.
And I think that's in response to Ani's question, is how do we think, I don't know it's where do we go, but I think it's in the process we are going to use and the way we're going to engage. And I actually think that John is right onto something there. This is a way in which we negotiate and partner and talk that, you know, those of us that have done international for a long time, that love the travel and the culture and you know, that the closeness that brings, that got stripped away in this. And we actually become very task focused in this. And I think there's huge opportunity there to do that.
Exactly.
And then we can go have fun when we travel. We don't have to work.
Without seeing someone's bedroom, Guy, you know, that building, you know, having a more personal view that this enables us of your client, I think is valuable. I mean, you know, we have time differences. Often our overseas clients with whom we want to speak are 6 hours or 7 hours time difference from us. So when I have a Zoom call with my client, they're already at home, and I don't know how observant, you know, we all are, but I like to look around and see what kind of you know, living conditions they have. I've seen barbecue pits in the backyard. I've seen a wine cellar. I've seen things I wouldn't have otherwise seen that gave me some insight into that client's personality that I think is invaluable.
Definitely. The thing I've been telling everyone is that I feel like creating new relationships in this format's really hard, but strengthening existing ones is actually possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
So maybe that's what our contribution can be today. But I appreciate y'all joining. I think we're going to cut it off. We're at 12:15. But Jorge, I don't know if you want to say anything final.
No. I think this has been awesome. It's one of the best we've had. Great interaction, and yet keeping within the common theme of resiliencies and international and service export, and then reinforcing the importance of education and the importance of the franchise, the importance of the tourism and the travel side as an integral part of what we're talking about. And it's the resiliency of the region at the end of the day, which is the resiliency of all of us. Well, again, thank you, everybody, and we look forward to the next one.
All right. Yeah. Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Nice seeing everybody. Thank Emmy.
Thank you.